This episode is dedicated to Poppy Perry. We remember the babies born sleeping, those we carried but never held, those we held but could not take home, and those who came home but could not stay. Rest in peace. Hey guys, welcome to another edition of The Parrot Life.
And
I think we're on episode 6.
Yes.
Today is going to be a tough episode. We're going to go through some of our personal experiences with something very near and dear to us. I don't really know how to begin today's episode. So I'm really just going to let my wife, take the lead in this one.
So let's start off with my shirt. With our shirts. Today, well, not today, but this month is October, and for the month of October, it is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. On October 15th is the Remembrance Day for, for the little ones that weren't able to be carried full term. Those may have passed within the first year of life. Just any infant and child loss. So that's what this shirt is. So in October we wear pink and blue, for that reason. My husband is wearing a shirt that I had made for us in remembrance of our son. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and just dive right in. And like my husband said, this is not an easy episode at all. And so if you do see myself or my husband pause a little bit, just bear with us. With pregnancy and infant loss, it seems like sometimes it's a taboo subject. People don't really talk about it as much, and to be honest, I'm not even sure why. Obviously, because it's not necessarily a positive thing, but it's also nothing to be ashamed of. And I think there is power in sharing your story, because your story can help someone, and it can help so many people. And I had someone share with me, and if it wasn't for that person, I don't think that I would have been able to get through this journey, experience, whatever it is that you want to call it. So let me just give you a little bit of background before I go ahead and talk about our story in specific. So according to the CDC, they report that stillbirths affect about 1 in every 160 births.
Those are very high numbers.
Yeah. And I'm not saying this to scare or put fear, but, that's the information, that I found upon, researching. And even in 160 births, our son was 1 in 160. Back in 2017, December 2017, more specifically December 28th, 2017, my husband and I found out that we were pregnant. We were expecting, our first child together, and it was a really exciting time for us. The pregnancy, was perfectly fine. Yeah. There were no complications. Our son was growing healthy. He was right on target. It actually got to one point at the end of the pregnancy where we're just like, my doctor is just like, yeah, you're not going to even make it to 40 weeks. This baby is going to probably come maybe a week or two early. Yeah. So that was great, you know. And then on top of that, you know, when we hit 20 weeks, we found out we were having a son. So my husband was excited. I was just over the moon. And, you know, when you're pregnant, you know, as a mother, you become in tune with your baby. And I was very in tune. It was just kind of like we already had a relationship, even though like I was on a blind date with my baby because I have no idea who this kid is, but I just loved him so much. And that's with every mother, I'm sure. But then fast forward to August 25th of 2017. It was a Thursday. And I went to work. It was just it was a normal day. I had gotten a message from one of my supervisors at the time who said, "Hey, can you come to this meeting room? I just want to chat with you really quick." I didn't think much of it. I went there, and there was a group of other people in there, and her supervisor comes in and tells everybody, "Hey, you know what? We're having budget cuts, and we're going to have to let you all go." At this point, I was already 37 weeks and some change. So I was full term. I was ready to have a baby any day. And literally, they just told me that I'm losing my job. And that's not a good headspace to be in.
No.
Because severance package or not, what do you do when that severance is over and done with and you have a new baby? Like, and that was just way too much, you know. And then on top of that, you know, at the time we had Kylan half the time as well. So it's just like, it just was not an ideal situation. I cried my eyes out. It was bad. I just had a full breakdown. So much to the fact that I just didn't even go to work the next day. There was no point. And I was okay. And then the weekend, you know, was okay. And then I remember I felt my son kick once, and then it was just like, that was about it. I didn't really feel anything else. And I felt like something was off, and I needed to just go to my doctor because he wasn't really responding to any, he wasn't responding to cold water or anything like that that would usually, you know, get him going. So I went in, they had me do a non-stress test. And as they were looking for his heart rate during the non-stress test, they could not find it. So because they were searching and searching and searching, they went ahead and they quickly, you know, booted somebody who was due to have an ultrasound at that time. You know, they were just like, "Look, you're going to have to push your appointment back. You know, we'll see you in a few minutes, but we have, you know, something else that we really need to tend to." And they did an ultrasound. I saw my baby, and I saw his heart, and there was nothing. There was nothing. His heart was still. And the nurse at the time that was with me, she
As you can see, this is still very, very fresh, you know, for the both of us. And, you know, we do have 2 other beautiful children.
Yes.
And, you know, I don't know what we would do without them. They've helped us get through, you know, tough times in relation to this. You know, having children is one of the biggest blessings that you can ever have.
Yes.
In life. And, you know, although, you know, when I had my first child, I wasn't necessarily planning on doing so, I wouldn't change it. And, you know, it's the same way with winter. We went into that. We knew that we were ready to try again, and with everything that happened with Poppy, you know, it still takes a toll every day.
Yeah.
And for anybody, you know, as my wife pointed out, this is not an uncommon occurrence. It happens to a lot of people.
And you don't realize that it happens to other people like that, because it's not something that a lot of people really talk about. But the nurse that I had at the time in that moment, she held my hand even while they were looking for his heart rate. My doctor was called in, and you know, my nurses and my doctor, they were amazing. They were supportive. My husband was at home with Kylan at the time, and she was down for a nap. And honestly, I went by myself because I was optimistic that, oh, everything is fine. You know, there's no need in, you know, waking her up to, you know, get my husband to, you know, come with me, you know, or anything like that. I was just really optimistic, which is why I didn't even try to have him come with me. Yeah, so at that moment, that was that. And, you know, they said that, you know, he was gone. And then, everything after that was a haze, but the next thing I know, I laid on the table and I just had like this scream. And I just remember that scream, and I've never screamed like that in my life. That's how much of a heartache and how much of a blow that it was. It was a pain that I had never in my life felt before, and I would never wish on my worst enemy. So from there, my doctor said, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to induce you tonight. My mother was due to come in the next day because we were prepping for Poppy to get here. Also, our son, we named him Poppy because when we found out about him, he was the size of a poppy seed. And so we didn't know the gender at the time, so we just referred to the baby as Poppy. And then when all of this happened, we decided that we were not going to call him the name that we had came up for him. We were going to keep him as Poppy because that's what we had called him thus far. And we felt comfortable with that. And the name that we were going to give him, we have fully retired, and we plan on never using it. But back to the story. So my mom, I ended up calling her as I'm leaving the doctor's office. The doctor did not want me to drive home, but I was just like, I'm fine. I don't even remember how I got home. But I found a way to get back to my husband. I called him first and told him what happened. And then I called my mom, and my mom broke down. My husband broke down. It was a mess. My mom at that point decided, I'm going to get on a flight and I'm flying to Ohio right now. And that's exactly what she did. And I just went home, and I was with my husband, and, you know, we had to call Kylan's mother to come and get her because it was just, I was a mess. My husband was a mess. It just wasn't appropriate for her to be there. We didn't want her to see that, and it was just too much. But my mom came in that night. I want to say maybe at like 1-2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I had to go into the hospital that morning to be induced. But labor had already kind of started on its own. So I was having contractions, and I was already about 3-4 centimeters dilated, and I had to go to the hospital a couple of hours early. And they put me in a portion of the hospital where there was no traffic. Nobody was really down there. The people at the hospital were absolutely, amazing. I had nurses that were amazing that I still keep in touch with today. I've had nurses who, when their shift was over, they came back just to be with us. And I couldn't have gotten through that without my mother, without my husband, without any of my family. Like, my family was literally my rock. And due to circumstances, I had to have an epidural. My doctor was just like, I don't want you to have to go through this naturally. There's already so much, going on. So then at that point, our son was born sleeping on August 28th, 2018. Once he was born, they took him in the other room, they cleaned him, they got him dressed, and then they brought him out to us because they gave us the option of, did we want to hold him right after he was born and things like that. And I didn't want to, because that would have given me, I feel like that would have given me like a sense of false hope, and I did not want to go through that. I was just already emotionally done. We got to be with him. They told us we could stay at the hospital as long as we wanted to. I was recovering well, and, we saw him a few times, and, we got him baptized. And we prayed over him and everything like that. And we had to make funeral arrangements for our son that we didn't even really have a chance to meet.
Yeah.
So after we started making arrangements, we hopped in the car and we came to Maryland just to get away for, at that point, we didn't even have a timeline of how long we were going to be in Maryland, but we just needed to get out of Ohio and process things, because it was just getting bad. I was in a very bad place. Depression had fully taken over at that point, and I did have a lot of days where I was just like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I vocalized that to my husband, and that's truly how I felt. I just felt like I don't want to do this anymore. That was it. You couldn't tell me otherwise. And at that point, my husband made the decision to leave his job, because, he was trying to take care of me. Mind you, I, still technically had a baby, so I'm postpartum. I'm still trying to, go through, I'm still recovering from having a baby. But then on top of that, I'm now grieving the loss of my first child, our first child together. And it was bad. It was to the point where my husband had to help me shower. I was not okay with being alone. It was the worst way I've ever felt in my entire life. And so his nursery was still there. We kept the door closed.
Yeah.
I could not go in there. It was just very, very difficult. It was very difficult to navigate at that point. So then after we came back from Maryland, um, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. Were we just going to move to a new place, or, whatever? And then at that point, we made the decision to move to Maryland. It was a very difficult decision, but the reality is I didn't have a job. I lost my job before I lost my son. So I lost my job. We lost our son. At that point, he left his job, and it was just like, we just need to get out of here and start over. We needed a new space. And that's how we ended up here, in Maryland. And one thing that I'll never forget, after everything happened, was I had a moment where I was feeling okay. And then I was leaning on the bed in my grandparents' guest room, and I got up and there was milk all over my shirt. And at that point, I just remember I lost it. I wept. It was another reminder for me, and it just made it hurt that much more. But my husband, his aunt, was and still is my rock. I could have not gotten through that without him. I could have not. I honestly couldn't have. There's no way. And again, the support of my family, them being there day in, day out. You need anything, what can we do? I couldn't ask for a better family. God knew what he was doing when he made me a member of my family, and he knew what he was doing when he introduced Mac into my life. So at this point, I want to just ask, how did you feel going through this whole process?
I think as a man and as a husband, you kind of want to be the rock. You want to be able to make sure that your wife is okay. My wife is my best friend, and I wanted to make sure that, before I lost it and before that I broke down, that she was going to be okay. My natural state is happens to be kind of pushing things back and holding things in, and sometimes it just unloads, and I'll explode for no reason just because of that, everything that I bottled up. And with this, it's not necessarily something that I could keep bottling up. It's when it happened, it was when I found out what happened, it turned my world upside down, and it was the worst day of my life. I've had pretty tough days. I've had, very, very bad things, occur in my life. The loss of my brother, that was another one. But losing a child is, nothing that I would wish on my worst enemy. And, it was the worst day ever. And from that day on, I took it upon myself to make sure that my wife, that she would be okay and in a good mental state. And I think in doing that, I kind of put myself on the back burner, mentally. And, we don't talk about this that often because it's an emotional topic, and it's very tough for us to have a conversation about this without at least one of us, shedding a few tears. And it's something that everybody should be aware of. This is the ugly side of childbirth. And it's really the ugly side of what could happen, when you decide that you want to try for kids. That shouldn't deter you from doing it, but just being aware that there's a possibility, is enough to make you not take anything for granted in that regard. We know that we're not the only person, people that has experienced this loss, and that there are millions of people out there that have. But one thing I don't think that my wife has said yet on this episode, which I've heard her say in the past, is that it often felt like everybody else's day just went on.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
and then that really truly how is how it is, how it feels. You find out some of the worst news in your life, and everybody else outside is going on just with their own life.
Yeah. That's like when I was in the hospital. What my husband was referring to is that day, like when everything happened. I look outside and you see people walking by with smiles on their face, and they're just getting on with their lives. And a part of me was just like, how could they possibly be getting on with their lives and when I'm going through this? It sounds crazy to say, but that's honestly what was going through my mind. And it was just kind of like my world literally stopped. It did. Like,
it's nothing that you want anybody to have to experience, but unfortunately it happens. To be honest, I sometimes I really don't know how I managed to function in that regard, because sometimes it seems like that I'm okay. I moved past what has happened and I made peace with it, and I would like to think that I have, but I think anybody who's experienced something like this would be remiss to tell you that they don't have days, and just you can be having a good day, and then you realize man, there's this person that should be here that's not here, or you're making a memory with your other children, and you just, it hits you that there's another child that that should be here.
and you feel guilty.
It's rough when you have to come to terms with that fact, at those points in time. It's never something that neither me or my wife will ever, forget that experience. It's impossible to. It gets a little bit, easier as time goes by to cope with it, but you never truly get over a loss like that. Yes, death is natural, but it's a part of our lives. But
you don't want it to happen to your kids.
Yeah, that is not something that at this point that it's easy to deal with at any point in time. You never want to hear something like that. Your kids should not die before you. That's just how it is. But we don't know what God has in store. We don't know the plans that He's laid before us. We just we live our lives, and we hope and we pray and we have faith that He's leading us on down the correct path. And unfortunately for Poppy, he called him home before we got a chance to actually get to know our son. It's at points like that where you're at your lowest, and then you have to depend upon family and friends and your spouse to get through. And we have managed to do so, all with the help of a lot of people. And like she said, that's the reason primarily why we're here in Maryland. But at the end of the day, we're both still dealing with it in our own ways, and we just try and be a shoulder for one another to lean on. So
it's safe to say that we both are still grieving. It's been 2 years. Our son would have been 2 on August 28th of this year. But like I said, we're still grieving. The month of August hit, and I felt like I hit a brick wall, and the sleepless nights came, and it's just very very emotional. And I still often feel guilt when I'm spending time with Winter, or when we're doing things as a family. And like my husband said, like it's just that moment of feeling like somebody's missing, especially when both of the girls are together. There's a lot of times where I'm just like, I really wish that their brother was here, physically. I know that he's in here in spirit. I feel him, but it's hard. It truly is. But and one thing I did forget is that the reason that my husband, the reason that our son passed apparently was an umbilical cord issue. It was wrapped around his neck, and it's just like, I just don't have any words for that, but just know, if something like this happens to you, it's not your fault. I blamed myself, and sometimes I still do, because I feel like I should have known. It's not your fault. It's okay to talk to somebody. Just talk through it. Sometimes that's going to be the only thing that saves you. Be real about your feelings. Like, you just, it's what you want to do, but me just saying, what might help you is honestly just talking through it and being honest about your feelings to whomever you are confiding in.
With that being said, this has been a very emotional episode for us, and we're going to go ahead and bring it to a close. As always, thank you for, tuning in, whether you're listening on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Buzzsprout, whatever, or you're viewing on YouTube. Thank you for viewing. This has been tough for us to talk about, but we felt it was important to, shed some light on it, because I know other people deal with this unfortunate circumstance. Visit our page on Facebook. If you have anything to say, you want to share your own story, we'd love to get in touch with you. We're easily accessible, so make sure to check that out. That's just The Perried Life, or at The Perried Life on Facebook. You can find us there. We're also on Twitter, The Perried Life. At this point, we're gonna go ahead and try and move on with the rest of our day after having to talk about this, but we hope you guys can do the same.
Bye, guys.